This is a short video to demonstrate the difficulty options that are available when you select a mission to play in Black One Blood Brothers. So let's select a mission and we'll start showing the first things that are available. This is the game mode. There's quite a number of different modes. You can see the first one is just like the mission that we've just uploaded. Spec Ops, execute a special operation behind enemy lines. Recon, where you have to place listening devices without being detected or neutralized, and I think that's the important part. If you get detected, you fail a mission. War, capture control points scattered around the map with an allied faction. That'll be interesting. Prisoner war, you have to escape from a detention facility alone and without gear. Siege, withstand a siege against an enemy force. Lone Wolf, execute a special operation alone behind enemy lines. And then Blind Ops, execute a special mission behind enemy lines without knowing the mission or the conditions of the operation. That would be another interesting one too. I haven't done any of these yet, but these shows you all the options, and that's just at the game mode level. Then we have map. We have all these different maps available that you can play those modes on. I assume that all modes play on all maps. I didn't see anything about exclusions. But you'll notice some of the maps are very small, some are very large, some are at an airport. There's the one in the training center. We've already been there before. There's a mall, various other places. A university, a drilling platform, small, a ship, a residential house, very small, a hospital, also small, and you can see that there's a number of different locations. Now there's also, you can use the editor to create your own map. Haven't even looked at that yet. That's later on. And Steam Workshop. I have not seen how many maps are available at this time, but that's always another option. Let's go to the next option of difficulty, and that's weather. You can choose between day and night, bad weather, good weather. Bad weather can be rain, snow, thunderstorms, blizzards, and just wet, snowy, cloudy. And in good weather, you can just have it wet, snowy, dry, wet, snowy, dry. So those are your three options. In other words, there's snow on the ground, or maybe there's puddles. So different things on the ground. Enemy, this is a very interesting option. The enemy can be insurgents, and you can pause and read the detail underneath. I won't read all of it out. Rebels, regular army, separatists, and dark army, retired special forces. So you can make the enemy force be different things. So when you play through them more than once, you can see how it works if you do, say, insurgents versus dark army. Then we have allies. Now there was one mission mode where you actually have allies, but I don't know if there's other mission modes where you can't have allies. And it's kind of the same thing as far as the different types of military. Finally, there's actually something that actually is called difficulty, but all these others relate to setting the game up to difficulties. Start with enemy. You can have enemies with high, very low, average health. Makes them easier to kill. The enemy present, that's how many enemies are going to be there. Sight, hearing is how well the enemy can detect you. Obviously, sight's a lot more important during the day. At night, it would be hearing would have a great importance. And then there's the accuracy of their weapons. The enemy can also have traps set for you, trap doors and trap windows, trying to get into a building. Whether or not they're allowed to throw grenades, and whether or not they have suicide bombers. Now, still under difficulty, there's nothing under tasks, I don't know what that is. Interface. You can turn on and off various things on your HUD. The no ammo indication is it disables the ability to tell the quantity of ammunition you have in your magazine. quick check just to make sure I'm still recording. The camouflage indicator is on the HUD in the lower left. It's the thing that has the boot on it, and it shows how well the enemy can detect you by sound and sight. So if you remove that sensor, you don't know how well they're hearing you or seeing you at the time. The crosshair, you can turn off the crosshair in third person view. And that's important because if you were using night vision goggles and you have that option set, you can't use a scope when you're using night vision goggles. So you have to essentially use third person view. Whether or not the warning symbols are, you'll get that call out from one of your buddies. We saw that in the video I already uploaded. That says your buddy will say, "I see an enemy 200 meters ahead" or something. You won't be getting that. You won't be getting the marker that your buddy puts on there. And then the marker, once you've seen the enemy, is an option to have. With this option, you can turn that marker off. Even though you've seen the enemy, you have to keep track of them. They're not just something that appears on your HUD. And there's the same way for ally marker. And the none marker completely turns off all markers. And then the waypoint means you can't set waypoints when you're in battle mode, battle plans mode, set waypoints. And then you can turn off the main HUD and turns off all everything else on the HUD. The things there's pop-ups like tasks and events and radios. All right. Next difficulty setting is gameplay. Aiming, real aiming. This is the one I told you about. If you have night vision goggles enabled, you'll have to use a laser if you want to aim. Otherwise, you're just kind of shooting by instinct. Spawning is the idea that the enemy will spawn on certain maps by design in the editor. And you can have a mix, or they can spawn indoors or outdoors primarily. This is important if you're playing on a map where you're going to be outdoors and enemies suddenly pop up outdoors. It won't seem realistic. You can change it to be indoors. Random insertion, instead of, as I showed in the first video, that you have a choice of insertion points, here the game will just pick one for you. And fatigue and injuries were already enabled in the one we played. If you're carrying too much equipment and you're fatigued from moving too fast, it'll affect your accuracy and your mobility. Same way with injuries. Injuries will affect your movement, accuracy, and vision. Squad is another difficulty. This will say, what's the average health of your squad? Or what's the health of your squad? Is it average? Is it low? Just like the enemy. Low, is it high? And sight and accuracy the same way. Death blow is interesting. You can get a shot that will kill an operator without any chance of being injured. In the first video I uploaded, I actually revived an injured player, an injured operator, one of my members of my team. You may not have that option available if you have this selected. True sight is the AI operators will be affected by some variables like sight and night vision goggles. You noticed again in that first video I uploaded, my teammates were shooting every enemy right off as soon as they spotted them. They were having no problems. This would change that. It would be harder for them to see them. And also, accuracy of AI. True accuracy is if your AI operators are moving, or they may have their weapon in a different mode, they won't be as accurate. And this one, the magazines of the AI operators are actually consumed. This is an option because if you've got an AI, he may be shooting more than you want him to and suddenly run out and you don't know it. And while it might be realistic as a player, it might not be a lot of fun to have to deal with that. Finally, aid. You can have third-person view turned on or off. If you have it turned off, you can only be in first-person view, and that's kind of awkward when you're inside of buildings. But it's an option for realism. Aiming zoom increases the zoom you can have with a regular sight. When you look down line of sight, you get some zoom. With this option, turned off, you won't get that zoom. And the unlimited support is an option that we haven't seen yet, but basically you can call for airstrikes or other off-map support. And without this option, with this option turned on, there'll be unlimited support. With the option turned off, there will be a limit to how much you can call as far as support, and it'll be as designed in the mission. All right, let's go to the last two. Loadout. You've got 10 operators, and that includes you. You're one of those 10 operators because you can always switch between them. You can be any one of these operators when you get in the field. So you can change their loadout and edit it, and there's quite a lot of things you can do. There's cosmetic, what they look like. You can change their faces and gaze and names and everything, but then also what they're wearing as far as clothes, the weapons loadout, and you can see there's quite a number of weapons. You can get ballistic shields. You've got all sorts of night vision goggles, binoculars, magazines. Obviously, you have to make sure you get a magazine that fits the weapon you've got. Skills. And this is another interesting point in the game. You can adjust the skills of the operator, and when you're not playing them, then they're limited by their own skills, how good they are at various things. When you're playing it, then I don't know what the effect is, but I suspect it means that you've got a better opportunity to use all those skills. But we'll see. And finally, there's presets. And I haven't really used this. I'd have to play around with it. I think this is where you can save a preset of a character you've built. Okay, finally it's deployment. This is a interesting screen because you can choose to go just by yourself, a single player. Or you can add anywhere from 2 to 10 in total. And what this does is, as you add, we'll add to deploy, look down at the bottom, there's an XP counter. Every one you add lowers the amount of XP that you can get. It basically means the more people you bring to fight for you, the fewer XPs you get because you're making it easier for yourself. But what's very important is you'll see all of the operators have different loadouts. So there might be a tool that you need it from that only one operator is carrying, like this drone that Hayes is carrying. If you don't bring Hayes, you don't have that drone unless you put it on somebody else. And that's something you have to think about. So that's all the different ways you can build a mission. I call them difficulties, but it's really options of flexibility and variables. So it's something to think about when you get this game, or if you're thinking whether or not you want this game, is you can build a game to be like you like it to be. You can have lots of tough enemies and go in lone ones against them. You can have a group of 10 operators for yourself to go in to fight the enemy. You can do it in the middle of a snowstorm. You can do it in a university somewhere. I don't know how a snowstorm would affect a university, but you can see. But there's a lot of ways, there's a lot of replayability. So that's something to think about.